Thank you very much. Do you remember what I've said 10 minutes ago? So, our panel is titled In What Society We Want to Live In, from welcoming to staying, or from support and help to solidarity to a different society. We will have two short rounds here on the panel. First, we will address issues that have been raised during the workshops as well, which is solidarity as a policy, as a politics, welcome culture, welcome movement, and support and help as solidarity, and a rather provocative question: is solidarity already a politics? We want to look at the impacts, the shortcomings and the weaknesses, but also the benefits, the strengths and the good moments of our struggles last year. Migration, anti-racist policies, migration policies and migrant practices have been around for a long time as well. My first question goes to Monica. In your work, in your solidarity work in the refugee protest camp Vienna, and you can tell us a little bit about how did you bring about these translation of solidarity into political practices? Where were the limits of support work and solidarity, and what lessons do you draw from that? What do you learn from that? First of all, let me say that it's a bit strange to represent the refugee protest camp Vienna, because it doesn't exist anymore, and if it was existing, I would not represent this camp here. A very important part of this camp, it was a self-organized camp, it was a protest organized by refugees, and we made sure that only refugees speak about their work and their organization, their protest camp in the public. It was the first and last self-organized refugee movement in Austria in 2012 and 2013. I will not talk about the genesis of that movement, but this discourse that nobody speaks on behalf of them, they speak themselves and they speak for themselves. That was a central issue in our work, and that reflected a major part of our practice, but only part of our practice, however, because we addressed all the challenges that were discussed today. They are relations of dependence and of domination. There are people who are more familiar with this system, and many experiences that we have not had. Many experiences of the refugees have been ignored and have been underestimated. So the solidarity was also always part of support, and there was always a conflict simmering below the surface, and I saw this as well reflected today in the discussions. So there was social support, there was legal support, there was political support, and often the political work is too little. We have to focus on other things. We do focus on other things other than political work. Solidarity is a political term for me. It's a political concept. It is political. It is not simply providing support. I wrote a book about this where I also talked about different concepts and terms of solidarity, and one of them is a Christian solidarity concept, which is very close to support or charity. My background, however, is a Marxist background. So I understood solidarity also in terms of this understanding. It was political work on an equal footing, basically. All right, we'll take a 2-minute break because one of the transmitters doesn't seem to be working, And we'll take a quick break to fix this, to try to fix this. So you have 2 minutes. You have a short break, or you can talk to the person sitting next to you. So we'll take a short break. Thanks to the interpreters of today. And for all the others who are helping as well, give a big hand to them as well, everyone who is involved. The kitchen workers, those who clean the toilets. All right, so this worked. Solidarity is a political concept. For me, it means to work on equal footing for society that we all envisage. So it's about equal rights, and it's about voicing your opinions and your positions and your needs as well. And that was combined with support services. Of course, I cannot struggle together with people who are being deported. So we have to tackle the legal side as well. And there was always a conflict between help and political solidarity, support and political solidarity, but also between friendship and political solidarity. It was the friendship, it was the romantic relationships that were important. This, of course, has to do with emotions. It has to do with desire as well. And because our work is so strong, and we are so strong in our work, because we are emotionally involved as well, of course. So all this has an emotional dimension. In this movement, all the refugees were men. And of course, there are those that you kind of get along with quite well, but there are also conflicts arising. This term, or the concept of welcome culture, this hasn't been around in 2013, and I think it's a problematic term, it's a problematic concept. I think we're not in a position to welcome or not welcome anyone. Everyone has the right to live in any place he or she wants to, and people who are not looked upon favorably, they also have the right to live here, regardless whether or not they are welcome, so to speak, or not. So it is about fighting for rights, for a common struggle for equal rights. And there are those that I can invite over as friends to have dinner, maybe, and we can have dinner together. And then there are those that I don't invite, that I don't feel are my friends. And this holds true for many initiatives, for many movements, and this is a point of starting, a point of departure for us. What do we learn from this for other movements, but also for a society in which we want to live as equals, with equal rights? And what does it mean when rights apply to everyone, regardless of whether we are born here or whether we have papers or not?
Thank you very much, Monica. Garrett, listening to this, what do you think, as somebody who's been very active in migration policy for 20 years, what's so new about the processes that we witness at the moment? And how do you think we can connect this experience to what you have done? Maybe I want to start by introducing myself a little more so you know what's my background. It's true that I represent the association Albende, but I'm not just going to talk about my experience at Albende, but about my political activism that goes back 2 times before I started working with Albende. I've lived in Berlin for decades, and since the 80s, I have worked in migrant organizations, self-organized migrant organizations, mainly working with migrants from Turkey and Kurdistan. There was also a time when I worked together with migrants and refugees from many different countries, many different continents even. We were working together on the same platform. You were just talking about the topic of solidarity and how you can turn it into political activity. What do these terms mean for us? How do we understand these terms? Well, I think these are all matters that should come natural to us. Of course, this is about a society in which everybody should enjoy the same rights and should be granted the same rights. What we do is nothing else than that what has for a long time been understood as very natural. The question is, what purpose does this solidarity serve? What is the overall goal? Of course, also the question, what kind of society do we want to fight for? Well, the name of the organization, Allmende, tells us its purpose, because Allmende is an old German term meaning common good, so a resource that belongs to everybody. That's what we are fighting for. We want to make sure that everybody enjoys the same rights, the same access to resources. These are our ideals. However, realities on the ground is sometimes very different, it's sometimes very harsh, something that we have to oppose. So we're not just fighting for our goals, but we are also trying to overcome obstacles, restrictions. We discussed a lot today about the welcome culture. What were the new features of the welcome culture? Well, I think a new aspect of it was that the dimensions were simply much greater than we had expected. The movement was much broader, much deeper. There were many more people willing to welcome refugees than we had expected. And although my experience in migrant work goes back for decades, I was very surprised that in Germany, which is usually a very cold country, also emotionally, people who had to flee their countries were given a very warm welcome in the end. Although, of course, even during that process of welcoming the refugees, there were some strange encounters. But overall, I think it was a very good basis, a basis for advancing the movement. What do I mean by that? I think we have not yet reached such a broad movement that would allow us to take it to the political level, because this welcome movement did not have a political foundation, and therefore it was stopped by the political sphere and the media quite quickly. It was downgraded, so to say. But although, of course, many organizations kept doing their work, what I mean is that there were restrictions, that there were repressions that were applied systematically. People raised their voice against this, of course. It's not to say about it's not only to do with German classes being offered or donations being made, though. There has to be more to it. Thank you very much, Gerrit. When Monica mentioned solidarity a minute ago, saying this was something political, you nodded your head very emphatically, and maybe you want to follow up on this. In the left discussions, I often felt that people wanted to politicize, to put a political concept on what happens. So to put it differently, Katja, do you see an opposition between the strong welcome culture and the relatively weak movement, the relatively weak resistance against the asylum packages or the deal with Turkey?
I am from Medico International. Let me just briefly introduce myself. It's a political and a human rights organization. We are an organization that try to have a critical understanding of support in practice and also in theory. And that is also relevant to the political processes that we are talking about. And our experience is relevant in that area as well, because we are criticizing humanitarian intervention and humanitarian assistance that is imposed on societies and that replaces a certain political idea. So instead of a political idea, support is offered. So that is what we see across the board. We don't solve problems, we don't resolve problems anymore. We support people in the lagers, we try to make sure that they survive, but we don't have any perspective to offer, any political perspective. The dilemma remains. People come to Germany, people come to Greece, they need help also. They also need support, that is what I mean. And in these complex situations, we try to have an understanding of this dilemma. Criticize support and overcoming support. It is not a gradual process that builds up, but this is something that takes place at the same time. So we have to defend support, we have to criticize support, critique support, and also overcome just this culture of support or help. So, and this is a very political work that we are doing. What prevails is not that kind of understanding of our work, but what prevails is neoliberalism. And neoliberalism in itself, by definition, excludes any sort of compassion or empathy. Neoliberalism promotes a culture of self-centeredness. And many people from different backgrounds and different contexts actually had a response, a very emotional response to the situation that we've seen. And many have taken radical steps. For example, if you take in someone that you don't know, that is, I see this as something very radical, to find out how our asylum system actually works, the devastation that is caused, the appalling situations people have to live under, the inhumane treatment of people. So the neoliberal social character is slowly but surely declining because people see through it, people become more aware of it. So on this note, or in that context, I would like to defend support. I would like to promote support. Now, to the second issue, the second dimension, is critiquing this culture of support. I have to be aware of what I'm doing. I have to understand my task. There's a giving and a taking. It is an asymmetrical relationship. That is a difference to solidarity, where we have a common political objective that we fight for, that we struggle for on the basis of solidarity. So people rely on our networks, on our political work and on our humane work. So as workers in that context, we have to be aware of our work, of our task, and also of our demands that we place upon the others. And overcoming, the third dimension is overcoming support. This culture of support is guaranteeing equal access to resources and equal rights. And this is where the big challenge is at the moment. And we should not be overwhelmed, or sometimes we actually are overwhelmed, and we should not be surprised by the fact that we failed miserably when it comes to preventing the ever more racist asylum policies and politics that we see. So actually we are close to a Third Reich situation, to a Nazi-era situation, because the political center has completely failed and sided with the right-wing extremists. How did it come about? The racist asylum laws, Asylpaket 2, this was submitted to the parliament just the night before. I have a friend in the committee that dealt with the draft. They didn't propose any changes, any amendments to the proposal, to the draft law, and everything was basically being accepted the way it was drawn up. And the only change that was made, the only changes that were made were symbolical changes, and that cannot even be implemented or enforced in the end. So there is a huge obstacle. We have to be aware of it. We have to accept it. We have to acknowledge it. So we have to come to terms with that failure. Because this is simply neoliberalism. This is the hegemony of the prevailing circumstances. So we have to continue our struggle. We have to continue trying to overcome these barriers that are in our minds as well. Thank you.
Katja, yes, this was mentioned a couple of times today. We're going to stay optimistic, and we want to believe in that we can build on the good experience that we can make and that we can turn them into a political activity, whatever that means. I was in a workshop today where many practical solutions were developed in how we could continue this meeting, how we could take it to the political sphere. It is true that we are at the moment approaching the political question, and I'd now like to ask Christos and give the floor to Christos. He was one of the most prominent representatives of Solidarity for All, at least in the way we perceived it here in Germany. Would you respond to Katja? What is your experience? You once mentioned that in the one hand you have to hold the bread and the political demands in the other hand. I think that was said very well. How did you manage to turn the solidarity activities, how did you manage to link all those initiatives in Greece?
First of all, I want to, in spite of, albeit thanking you, yeah? Okay.
Es gibt wieder ein technisches Problem. Das heißt, seid kreativ. Wem danken wir jetzt? Ein Applaus für die Technik.
That support our gathering here. And give a hand to the childcare, those who take care of our children while we are discussing things. Maybe we can also make a couple of announcements that were scheduled for later. I was asked, we have a very liberal headphone policy. We have lost already a few, and we would like to urge you to please give them back.
I want to thank you, and I wanted, before I ask, or starting my answer, to say that the first tax that was imposed on the Greek people from the first bailout, it was called Solidarity tax. And still we pay this tax. We pay a tax for the decision of the EU elites to save their banks, and now has been turned into a permanent tax. So we give a lot, even the Greeks that they don't want, we give a lot to solidarity. And I'm saying this in order to say that the term solidarity is a contested term. It is a battle that we have to give to define the term of and the praxis of solidarity. And this is important because what happened in Europe the last summer, or what happened in Greece since 2011, 2012, and I mean this spontaneous, in huge degree, reaction of the people to a certain social issue that emerged, that the people took the initiative to do something about this, exactly where all the institutions, the established kind of political representatives or the established organizations, charities, etc., or even, the established social and political oppositions like us, we were not able to respond as quickly. This is what happened in Greece in 2011 and 2012. We didn't have to connect the solidarity movement with the political struggle, because the solidarity movement was the offspring of the squares occupation movement, of these huge political battles that now we are in, now we complete 5 years from then, that almost brought down the Papandreou government. So when the results of the austerity started accumulating, and the people retreated from the squares and they went to their neighborhoods, this experience of self-organization, direct democracy, etc., they put them in practice in order to accommodate the needs of those Greek people that they had been alienated by their own representatives. Okay. Imagine this as a different kind of immigration or exclusion, yeah? So, and this created a terrain where for first time, and despite the fact that many of the practices that have been inspired by the anti-racist movement, but was the first time that there were created solidarity structures that Greeks and immigrants were working together, and not in order the Greeks to help the immigrants. There were Greeks and immigrants that they were helping Greeks and immigrants. And I think this is the biggest challenge if we want to dominate the discourse of, to be hegemonic in the discourse of solidarity, if we want to be able to draw a line against the solidarity that Merkel says that is doing, because also Merkel hailed for a moment, the welcome refugee, movement, or if we want to draw a line from charities or what other kind of help work towards people in need, that they do help them to sort out temporarily some basic needs of those, but in reality they reproduce this kind of relations of disempowering and in order to maintain the positions of power that some people hold. And for me, this is the reason why I think that solidarity is already a political act, a solidarity that is based on the concept of mutuality and reciprocity. We left activists, many times, we see ourselves that those that we are destined to save society. We call it change society, but in reality, more we are defined by the dominant discourse of, we do good to society. And I want to emphasize what Monica says about the ability to learn from other people. And the good thing that this refugee influx in Europe has made, and the welcome refugee, I think it shifts also what we understand as politics. There we have to learn a lot by doing solidarity with those that are excluded, refugees or not refugees, from the rights that we take, many of us, for granted.
Let's address the concrete political agenda, and let's evoke two images once again. The deaths on the Mediterranean, the appalling conditions in the camps and also along the escape routes. Then people arriving at the main stations and people welcoming them. And the second point, welcoming people within the context of a border regime and also a false concept of integration, a racist concept of integration. And against that backdrop, ask the question, how do we translate solidarity into a political program? The gap between practiced solidarity and political organization and political program that reflects that solidarity. Maybe we can address this gap and also talk about how to overcome this gap. I think, Katja, you are in favor of the principle and the concept of a connective party, which is a party that is beneficial also to those who are politically active, that works in favor of those who are politically active in the movements. What is the challenge? What is the revolution that is now necessary in this field at this conjuncture? I was asked to be very concrete in my response. I'm not going to justify anything. I'm not going to give you a full report, but let me make a couple of examples where members of our party and of our parliamentary group in Berlin can have an agency. The idea of a connective party also reflected in the idea of a mosaic left, where we say we should break with the notion that we have individual rationalities and identities. We have to see that parties in themselves have different rationalities. The question is, how can we contribute something to our common values and a common purpose and common aims? Of course, parties do not only provide resources and material resources, physical resources, they also create a public. And a connective party for us means that parliamentarians also accompany movements. They are part of movements as well, and they provide also protection. From a party perspective, we cannot simulate movements. And just to take up the example of Leipzig, because we are in Leipzig and we work together with actors in Leipzig, we have a model of open offices, and one of those open offices is Linksnet, is a partner here in Leipzig, and you don't meet, it's not there to meet parliamentarians, but actually to be able to use the resources that are offered and that we can provide as a party. We have also a liaison office for social movements, so we can create these organic links between movement and party, where we can interact, where we can intersect at many moments, at many conjunctures. So what we do in the parliament and we do in the party, we can be very close to the movement as well. And now with respect to solidarity, let me address the question of solidarity. Last year we organized a conference addressing the issue of the movements of supporters and escape workers. That is where the idea for Welcome2Stay actually emerged. And I made one observation. Today we see a polarization in our societies. But after summer last year, these many initiatives of solidarity, they did not dominate the public discourse. Pegida is still prevailing. They are still dominating the discourse, for example, in Dresden. And the thousands that go to the Mediterranean to support people, to rescue people, they're not being reported. This is not being covered in the media. And they don't have any, they're not visible in the public discourse anymore. They're many groups that organize in different ways, but they're all part of a larger movement. We could call them, I called them once, the camp of solidarity. This has to become more visible. We have to hear it. Its voice is stronger, and it has to come back to dominating the discourse. And our dilemma that we're facing at the moment is there's a lot of practical solidarity, different forms of solidarity, self-organization, supporting self-organization. Those are very existential issues. And you could have the impression that neoliberalism actually exhausts its enemies because we are constantly dealing with and overwhelmed with making sure that people can survive. But our task is, of course, to fight, to struggle for a different society. And you could talk about it in terms of a social offensive. That is why we have to create spaces for people to be able to reflect in what kind of society we want to live in, and what kind of fundamental changes are needed in society to do that, to realize that. I don't know what the next steps will be or may be, but I know what we should not do. Struggling for a revolution of justice and overcoming of the existing circumstances. It has to be done by linking different struggles. And Marx, in his Feuerbach thesis, in one of his theses, mentioned revolutionary practices have to embody and include both changing the circumstances, but also changing ourselves. And changing ourselves, we have to make the tomorrow visible in the today. And on that note, I'd like to thank all those that helped organize this gathering. I think they made this happen. They made the tomorrow visible in the today, the better tomorrow visible in the today.
That was almost a final comment, Katja, but we do want to go on for a little while longer. Gerrit, 20 years of experience. I know I've emphasized this before. Where do you position yourself in that solidarity block, as Katja named it? Where's your role, and what's the Left Migrant Project in it? Of course, we want to build on our experience. We don't want to let it go to waste, because we have struggled for a better society, and we want to make this struggle more efficient. And we shouldn't lose sight of certain challenges and risks here. Struggling for social transformation, that's going to require a lot of stamina. Especially under current conditions, we know that this is going to be a long-term struggle, and we shouldn't be disappointed too easily. We shouldn't be disappointed when we do not reach our big goals in the next 2 or 3 months or years. And I'm not just talking about Germany here or only about Europe. I'm talking about the worldwide capitalist system, where other poles do not even exist anymore. Capitalism has really established itself almost everywhere, and it is not yet foreseeable when this system can really be questioned in the future. There are many struggles that we welcome, of course, many movements that question the system, many movements that do a lot of practical work, but are also not forgetting the long-term perspective. So, building on my own experience or on the experience of my organization, I can tell you that we have launched some very substantial campaigns. During the 90s, for example, we were not only engaged in solidarity work with the refugees, but we were also developing our own perception of our own organization. We were trying to further develop our own structure. It's important that we reach a level playing ground with others. It's the struggle that has to take place in parallel with the practical work that needs to be done. So we need permanent and efficient struggle against the established structures. This course also comprises something that we focus on, which is the fight against racism, because racism is at the core of all the bad developments that we see. This is not only in relation to fighting for certain rights or certain goals. That is self-evident, of course. But what I mean is that we mustn't forget the structure, the system that we're confronted with. So we have fought racism on a very clear, substantial level. For example, we have managed to avoid letting somebody who's highly racist speak in a public theater. We have organized our campaigns together with the organizations that are also anti-racist. What we need in order to do this is the space. And the space sometimes in very concrete terms, in the form of rooms where you can meet, offices, so to say, where you can forge long-term plans. We're facing this very problem at the moment because 1.5 years ago, our offices were, we were evicted from our offices by the police. We had a very nice social center where various groups came together. However, this place was shut down by the police. This place served an important goal to enable many organizations to stage their campaigns and also to forge alliances. One important experience that I'd like to share with you is that despite all the different backgrounds and different experiences, we know that if we keep working together on our common goals, we can look into the future together.
Thank you. Yesterday, Medico held a conference. I'm not sure about the title anymore, but I think it was something like a different, better, more global Europe. Now we're speaking about concrete politics and policies. What do you think, as someone who has been working in this area for a long time, where do we have to transnationalize and globalize our discussions? Where do we need a more transnational and global perspective, and where is the space for concrete political projects that promote and advance these discussions, these more transnational and more global discussions. This conference, yes, was about a field of action, Europe as a field of action, with partners working mainly in other regions, on other continents. And the question mainly was, how do we rethink Europe and how do we reconstitute Europe in a way that it upholds human rights and mutuality? Our partners in the South, they say Europe is a lost case, basically. So the outlook for Europe is basically very bleak. Greece was our opportunity to change course, but the political elites in Europe are not able to take that very bold step to change things, and this is reflected also in the so-called refugee crisis. The externalization of the border, this is a term that you all know very well, and this has been intensified. This has been intensified so much, and there are billions of euros are spent to buy governments of African countries to take back their people, basically. It used to be, or in the past, you had to talk with the embassies. And then the country could say yes or no, we take someone back. This is also deportation, but most of the time these were countries where actually these people had certain rights, but now it is only about the color of their skin. Basically, they're deporting black people back to Africa. That is what they're doing. And in order to be able to do this, they are buying the governments of African countries. So this is basically the imposition of an undemocratic project. Fragile countries are being bought, rights, political rights, civil rights are suspended completely. What is the alternative? The alternative is Welcome2Stay, degrowth. These are alternatives. All those who understand that they have to act locally and think globally. And this is, I think, a crucial point in our discussion. And I insist on the point that support for refugees in itself is a political act. It is much more political in a way than we think, than we assume. Because people are taking risks, people they gain a different understanding of the way things work in that world. We need to basically free ourselves of that mindset of there is no alternative. And Robert Missig, he summed it up quite nicely. He talked about the inner compass, and it has to be adjusted to see what is working. Take the example of Greece. All Greek comrades said, if we don't support Syriza, we will see the rise of the right-wing extremism. But we didn't see this coming. We didn't see this happening because Idomeni was not taken over and was not attacked by fascists. It was supported by the neighboring communities. So people they think differently now. They don't want to continue with this imperial mode of living anymore. They want a change. They don't want to continue with this imperial mode of living. We have to take small steps, of course. We have to tackle large issues, but it's difficult to grasp them. there are steps towards a world government or governance in the area of environmental rights, for example. But in the area of human rights, this is still unconceivable. We are a small organization, and Medico International now tries to advocate for a global health fund under the umbrella of the World Health Organization. This is one step that we are taking. So we are slowly but surely actually building this different world that we are envisioning. Gramsci, I'd like to quote him by way of concluding, we have to act with the pessimism of the mind. We have to act with the pessimism of the mind and the optimism of the will. And maybe we can work or continue our political work with that contradiction by employing that contradiction to our benefit. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Christus, I'd like to pass the microphone on to you now.
No question. So let me just make a remark about questions and answers. Many times, and I'm saying this because in the, despite the good feeling of this conference, people are so impatient to reach results very quickly. Okay, one French philosopher, I think his name. Sorry, I don't remember his name. I think it was Leblanc, his surname. He said that he was an epistemologist, okay, and he said the problem is not to reach the correct answers, but to put the correct questions. And I think this conference, I think it does succeed on that. For example, today's this panel's title about what society we want, I think it is instrumental if we want to respond, to the domination or of the discourse about that informs our struggles, that has been hijacked either by Merkel or by AfD. And we haven't been able to convince, and this is the only way that you can really politicize whatever you do, from refugee solidarity to environmentalism or to whatever. And we have a lot of experiences of our discourses being hijacked by the system, okay? So we have to produce and to give answers exactly to the question that the people, the majority of the people, not which they have different needs than the needs of the movements, yeah, to respond to their questions about what is our future, what society we want to live in, who will be able to facilitate us, and this may be us, okay, to bring this society. And I think it is important in the Solidarity movement for us that it was important for the Solidarity movement in Greece because we gave substance to the discourse of hope by doing, at the same time that the welfare state was collapsing, we didn't only provide for the people, okay? This was the only way actually that we had in order to defend the right to health access, to everyone, yeah? So demands didn't count in that, and even now they don't count in Greece as a discourse. But what was most, it is that the way that the things were organized, it was completely with self-organization, open participation process, direct democracy, that aimed to include, to engage everyone that was, not only those that could help, but also mainly those that they had the problem, and to facilitate their agency and their empowerment. And I think this is what I was saying earlier, that solidarity shifts the way that we think about politics. And also for another reason, speaking about future. I disagree, while I agree in most of what Monica said, I disagree about that solidarity is against neoliberalism. Because I said that solidarity is also a contested term. Okay. Neoliberalism uses the concept of solidarity in the form of voluntarism and all that stuff in order to, and also, you know, neoliberalism has hijacked the other Gramscian term of civil society, yeah? And the model that proposes against, you know, at the same time that liquidates, you know, the welfare system, it is the concept of big society, the big slogan that brought Cameron into power, which is outsourcing what society has gained through the state back into the society, and then fight for your survival. Okay. So this is why it is very important that solidarity, it will become a central domain of social and political antagonism. And whoever defines this domain, I think will be able to construct different social relationships, different solidarity economy, so economic model, and different kind of politics. So at the same time that we have to defend what we have gained all the previous centuries, at the same time we have to create from now, okay, this other society. We don't have any other option.
But let me nevertheless try to pick up on this. I agree to what Katja has said, or to Katja's understanding that solidarity and neoliberalism are not compatible. Solidarity is framed within nationalist terms, and within national terms. Democracy, freedom, equality, and solidarity. And this solidarity is a prerequisite for freedom and equality. Those that are arriving in our societies are denied these rights and this freedom because they come from other places. They don't have the citizenship. That is something we have to tackle at a political level. Of course, nation is a construct, a very effective construct, and solidarity works very well, I think. On an emotional level, if there's a flood, many people donate. Within the country, many people from the same population, for example, if we have floods in Austria, many people in Austria donate, and we have solidarity structures and institutions that we have created, such as social security systems. So when it comes to translating solidarity, this what we have developed and achieved within the social welfare state can be used to create something that goes beyond something like the welfare state, the social welfare state. And I think this will come about by itself, without our doing, without us controlling that. We will not be able to stop migration. We have difficulties grappling with the circumstances that exist at the moment. Many people have died at the national borders. This is something we cannot change. This kind of solidarity has not been created within the European Union. It does not exist, and that is visible right now. And Europe will fail because there's no solidarity between the European member states, the EU member states. Austria closed the Balkan route on its side, and they knew what would happen in Macedonia and other countries, but they don't care because it's far away. They don't see it. And that is why they don't care. So the failure of Europe is a double question, whether or not the European Union as a whole fails. This is one question, and the other question is whether the European values do play any role at all. And this value question is also a question of rights. And let me briefly talk about the question of visions for another society. Let me just say that we should not shy away from conflicts. So on the long term, we will probably agree on basic aspects of this society that we envision. For example, those who are eligible for asylum should actually be granted asylum. Mobility is a human right. There should be freedom of movement for everyone. So this is all included, and of course this is based on other visions of society or understandings of society. And we should actually talk about those visions. We have long-term visions and perspectives and short-term perspectives and visions. And there are many good examples that we could mention. And for this short-term perspectives, we have to network at transnational level. One example is the City Plaza action. It is a very good example of combining practical work and political work. And how do you occupy, how do you squat something, and how do you, in a proactive manner, and without only responding to circumstances. In Vienna, we have an organization called Migrating Kitchen, and guest workers from the former Yugoslavia, together with other migrant workers, develop a self-organized solidarity company or enterprise under capitalist conditions. It's very hard to realize and to put into practice. Another aspect is that what is in between the short-term and the long-term perspective. So what is in between projects such as Migrating Kitchen and Overcoming Capitalism? What is in between? What are the projects, the in-between, the midterm projects? Thank you, Monika. I have one final question to all of you. Let's suppose we are now in 2020. Katja, you wanted to add something? You wanted to respond first before... Please be brief. I would like to ask you to be brief. We had... I think Monika raised an interesting question. We don't have time to go into it now, the question of midterm projects, but maybe we can also talk about what we're going to do tomorrow, connect this to the discussion of tomorrow. What would be the next steps? What do we take away from this conference? Of course, we will have many ideas and inspirations and exchange in the next session, basically, the night of visions, the long night of visions. But I think, how can we combine all the issues that have been raised at a practical level on a day-to-day basis? So we have an erosion of the asylum law, and I think it's pretty sure that this will continue. It will become ever more racist. So how can we? Why can't we just go to our member of parliament, to our member of the Bundestag, and address those issues? We are discussing with you about how to prevent about how to prevent more racist policies. We cannot cook in our open kitchen what we usually do on Thursday. That's why we're going to order pizza, and you are going to pay for it, or we would like to ask you to pay for it. This is one aspect. There are many things happening in this camp of solidarity, and we are a diverse group, and maybe this has been the start of something. This has been the birth of something. Maybe there will be demonstrations, maybe where we can join again, maybe we can meet again, maybe we can join together for actions such as demonstrations as well. So this was just the beginning. This is just a couple of things I wanted to mention.
Thank you very much, Katja. I think this could have been also your answer to the question that I'm going to ask you now. Imagine you are in the year 2022. And please let us know, what was this meeting important for, and what did we do after the meeting? What did we do after Welcome2Stay? Who's quickest in answering this? Who wants to go first? Well, we became more and more. If you ask the pessimist, the optimist inside me, then this is what I'm going to answer. In 2022, we will have achieved a lot more. We will have taken other steps towards a society that guarantees social security for everybody, independently of where they were born. And I'm going to use a term now that comes from a different kind of movement, the term of a barrier-free society. A society that allows people to participate independent of their financial means, independent of their body capacities. Building a society that is free of fear and impediments for people.
2022 will decide what was the use of this meeting, not us. But what I would like to set up as goals that we have to achieve by 2022 is first to eradicate the reasons that the people are forced to leave their houses and their livelihoods and their places and their families. Because, sorry, but I don't buy this discourse of the refugees as the radical subject, that an immobile subject, etc. My experience shows otherwise. Yeah. And I'm saying this because we have to also to face our absences if we want what we miss, if we want to be successful in 2022. And what the solidarity to the refugees movement is missing is all the process, all the fight, the anti-colonial and anti-imperialist fight that we have to give in Europe against our own governments, which is something more than rights, than fighting for rights. And the last, it was at the same time that we have to eradicate the reasons why people are forced to move, also to eradicate all the reasons why people have to be taken off their rights. Even if they decide to move, they have to be free to move and to settle wherever they want. Thank you.
Also in 6 Jahren
part of the struggle that was afterwards continued in many different forms. I will be 60 by then. Maybe others will fight this struggle by then. I'd love to be able to say in 2022 that we have achieved our goals, but realistically this will not be the case for some of our long-term goals. But hope is last to die, and as long as you don't give up hope, there's a lot that we'll be able to achieve.
6 years is not a very long time. I don't expect any solution by then, any resolution. I come from a country that is divided into a left and a right, and we have yet to see what direction this will take. What about our struggles? Are we struggling together, or are we struggling against each other? Do we struggle that is inclusive? Do we lead a struggle that is inclusive and includes both those that benefit from the system and those that are exploited by the system, those that have privileges and those that are exploited and disenfranchised? I brought an image. This is an artifact made by an artist called Ada, who lives in Berlin now. This is the globe, this is the earth without borders. There are no borders anymore on that earth, on that planet. Chaos and repair equal universe. Chaos and repair equal universe. That is his notion of the world, of the planet, of the globe. So everything is being mended. There are a lot of conflicts, there are a lot of issues and problems. Everything is very fragile, but everything is being repaired, everything is being healed, everything is being alleviated. It will not be a perfect world, but it will be a mixed world without borders. Those that want to stay where they are, they can stay where they are. Those that want to move, they are able to move. Because they're looking for something else, and not because they are forced to move. Because freedom of movement is one of the fundamental human rights, but no one should be forced to move. Everyone, however, should have the right to move. Thank you. That is my vision for 2022. Thank you very much. So we will shortly move over to the tent. Now you have space, you have time for visions, for predictions, for having fun, for having a party until tomorrow morning. But first of all, thank you. Thank you to all of you at our panel. Thank you to all of you for your patience, for your contribution. Thank you. Thank you for the interpretation. Thank you to the translators.